Radio Spaetkauf. Berlin news in English.
It's December 6, 2023, and today we are recording a special edition of Radio Spaetkauf in a partnership with Europäische Akademie Berlin. We're looking for prescriptions to the issues affecting our city and the rest of the world, which revolves around Berlin. Today we're at Salon Am Moritzplatz, considering a future without homelessness in front of a very lovely audience. I am Matilda Kaiser.
And I'm Daniel Stern, and it's very nice to see you, and very nice to see all of you. We tried to come up with a good name for this idea pilot we're trying out. But the idea is we spend a lot of episodes talking about things that have gone wrong. They just make the news, and we do the news.
Yeah.
And we also, I feel like I belong to a community of people who spends an increasing amount of time complaining about Berlin. And I feel like, we're right. Most of the time, but it doesn't contribute that much. So I began really wanting to look for a way to think about the future and be hopeful, or at least think about opportunities for hope.
Yeah, this is far-fetched for you, Dan Stern.
Dan
Stern is known in the podcast for your very specific brand of hopelessness.
Well, yeah, there was some, that was one tweet, and I really tried to tone down the sarcasm after that. How have you been doing?
I have been slipping and sliding on the ice, but very happy for the snow, actually, surprisingly enough.
You're happy for the snow?
The snow is better than the sad rain.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's lighter and it gives the illusion of light.
Yes, absolutely. I did see, and we'll talk. We'll get to more pressing matters. But I did see the largest, most perfect 6-pointed star just land on my little cute baby's head and just sit there to where I was like, oh, that's confetti. People got to stop littering. And then I was like, no, that's snow. That's beautiful. I have to let that into my life.
See, that's when I say your very specific brand of hopelessness. It couldn't possibly be snow. It must be littering. I will say, I'm really surprised. Some people seem to be walking through the snow and ice with no problem at all. And I am walking like a toddler that has just learned how to walk. I'm like, and I see people on their bikes and I fall just standing up.
Yeah, well, I do have a toddler who's just learned to walk and he's actually doing fine.
Yeah, so this seems to be a me problem.
But there is something, this I think goes to the difference between maybe cultural responsibility and personal responsibility. Not everyone here will shovel the ice or put down little sand or salt or whatever. I mean, I grew up in, I don't think they have winter in New England anymore. That's been phased out. But but that's, I think there's something to be said for us taking care of each other. So the topic tonight is the issue of people without homes, or the people that facing homelessness. The nomenclature of this kind of gets me wrapped up. In English, we've had issues of saying, well, we don't want to call people homeless, or we do, or we want to call more. And so I'm going to stumble a few times as I try and just say the most simple sentence, what are we going to talk about tonight? We could maybe talk a little bit about how to talk about what we're talking about. I don't want to spend the whole episode doing that. And the questions I kind of have are do we have a right to shelter? Do we have a right to a home? We, as Berliners, we go from being very warm to our neighbors to completely inhospitable, sort of like the weather here. And honestly, as I was researching this topic and going through even just old episodes of our own show, we've talked about this and other things, and it's a cycle, In the summer, we go out and basically we just try and get sun, and then we report on crime because nothing else is happening. And we spend the spring and the fall every year reporting on politics because that's when we're getting ready to do things or finding out it didn't work. And then winter, usually we just argue. You talk about how you hate Christmas markets, and I try and convince you that they are wonderful and you have to embrace them. Yeah, I mean, the other thing we cover every winter is we remind people the number for the Kältebus.
That's right. And the number for the Kältebus is 030-690-333-690. But can also be found online, and we want to remind you.
Many of our listeners have smartphones where they could just type it in.
Many of you are listening to this on a smartphone, so use it. It is a decades-old solution, but it doesn't help to make permanent changes. Today we're going to look at pathways that can lead people from sleeping rough to sleeping in a home. We will also consider the stigmas that are assigned to the idea of homelessness, or if we want to keep stumbling, to people without shelter. Is it possible to hold our society or our government accountable? And as individuals, do we have opportunities or responsibilities to help?
Yeah. To be honest, like when we decided to do this topic, I went into it with some really like awful level of hubris where I was like, I think if I ask a couple experts how to fix this, then we can pretty much solve it. I'm going to admit that might have been a little bit rash of me. There are a lot of things that we've, again, covered over the years. It's hard to even learn about what the status of this is in Berlin. I think it was maybe a few years ago, we did a story on the Night of Solidarity, where people were asked to go out and do a census and find out how many people were sleeping rough in the city. And still to this day, when you look for estimates of how many people are without homes in Germany or without them in Berlin, the numbers vary pretty wildly when you're out there doing that research. Even well-documented studies are plus or minus 500, and with hundreds of thousands of people coming to the city and moving here and a housing crisis, that's all likely to be out of date by the time you've finished counting. Another update I found in looking through some of our past chats on this, one of the final squats that were shut down, Liebig 14, actually saw some activists in October retake 2 apartments. So I don't know what you would call that, sort of de-expropriating.
Re-expropriate.
Yes. But I feel like battles over squats or the use of squats is maybe no longer a viable option as it was some decades ago in this city. Do you remember what was the
Zweckentfremdung? Even for a German speaker, it's not an easy word. There's a lot of consonants.
You only got halfway through it.
Yeah, that's true. It's Zweckentfremdungsverbot. So many consonants.
If longtime listeners might remember, this was the idea that it should be illegal to misuse housing for purposes like leaving it empty or commercial spaces rather than making it available to the general public. And that was just another one of these things that we reported on, well, this will do the trick, and maybe hasn't entirely worked. I don't know.
There goes that very specific brand of hopelessness. We're watching kind of the progress that Berlin has, right? The growth that it is having in becoming a metropolis, getting more expensive, getting a more difficult place to live with larger industries. I mean, we're getting our very own Amazon tower now, right? We're really hitting capitalism hard. And if you're looking at other cities that have had this type of growth and you're addressing this problem in places like London or San Francisco or New York or Los Angeles, you see how it balloons together one-on-one with the economic growth of the city. So with the larger economic growth comes a larger responsibility towards people to not be left behind.
Yeah, I wonder if the Amazon tower can fall under Zweckentfremdungsverbot. This seems like a it is like, I mean, we can't force people, I suppose, we can do whatever we want, but there is, for whatever number of residences are underused or misused, I mean, there's every street just full of empty commercial spaces.
Yeah.
Every single street has empty commercial spaces on it, and every single street has new commercial buildings. And it's just shocking to me when I walk around my neighborhood where I would like to continue to live, but I am running out of space in my apartment. And I just, look, there's going to be a bunch of new homes for me. And it is like, no, it's some sort of inscrutable company that has a hashtag that I could maybe follow to find out what they do, but I'd rather not.
What I wonder is like co-working spaces keep opening, but if everyone is co-working, shouldn't we need fewer? I don't understand.
Oh, right. Like they're not going to the office.
Yeah, but there keeps to be more co-working spaces.
Yeah, I think the people at the co-working spaces don't have jobs. I mean...
Is it because it's you?
Yeah, I mean, just going off of my co-working space, I'd say most people co-working spaces just have like a successful partner who's paying most of their bills. But I mean, at least that's my perspective, and that is a limited one.
I will say, I think having a co-working space is a grand luxury.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean that as opposed to
just like sitting in your bed crying, eating croissants and working.
Yeah, but the thing about the co-working space...
That was a very Marie Antoinette picture that I drew. I was like, as if...
You're not allowed, they discourage you from crying there. So it's like, you really need, if you get the co-working space, then you need to get a crying space. And then it becomes a whole thing.
See, I like to combine it all.
Yeah.
You have a cry, you have a work. Blend.
Right. Get paid to cry.
Get paid to cry. I think to everyone that is a full-time employee anywhere, you need to invest more time into breaking down while getting paid. Do not break down on holiday or in your free time. That is the simplest way to fight capitalism.
And I think maybe there's more effective ways to fight capitalism. It would be nice. I mean, maybe we can sort of decommodify homes and make them something, or if not decommodify them, what's in between? Make them less commodified. Okay.
Great.
I feel like I was looking for a German word there. I was like, that's a language where I can just stick something on there. And what I want to say is a word that is the sentence, make it less of a commodity. Maybe some of our guests will be able to tell us not only the answer to my stupid questions, but the more important ones that we have brought up here. Shall we?
Our first guest is a photographer. Her portraits document the lives of people on the margins of society who face social injustice, women in Eastern Europe affected by human trafficking and forced prostitution, single mothers in slums in Malawi, and people living on the streets of Berlin. Her most recent exhibition, Home Sweet Home, was on display in the Bundestag. Please welcome, with a huge round of applause, Debora Ruppert.
Debora, welcome to Radio Spaetkauf. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
When I was introduced to your work and look at the website, and one of the things I felt really uncomfortable with today is putting together a panel of people to discuss something wherein none of them are participating in it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't take any other demographic of people and exclude them from the conversation. But I honestly didn't know how to do it. Listening to some of your stories that you've recorded were amazing and eye-opening and really unique. Is there anything that you've learned in your experience about how to bring people into the broader conversation?
Yeah, I totally get your point, because I think it's really a little bit weird that we are talking about homelessness tonight. And as far as I know, none of us here is without a home.
Certainly on the panel.
Yeah, so in my work, I try to speak with the people and not about them. This is at least my approach. When I have an opening of an exhibition, I invite people from the streets, and I know it's really a huge step for them to enter the discussion, to enter a room where primarily people are or not primarily, to 99.9% people who have a home. So I would say it needs a lot of trust for them to enter those places. And sometimes they come with a friend or with a social worker. And I try to also invite them on the panel. When they participate in the panel, it's normally people which I met on the street, but which are now back in a house, like in a home. So they are not directly living on the street anymore, because I don't want to exhibit someone, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable.
Is there, with all the people that you speak to, are there common threads that you notice about the stories that they tell? Are there similarities?
Yes, I would say there are many, like kind of you see patterns occurring in many lives. So what you often see is that they experience traumatic event, or this could be like the loss of a person they loved, or a very intense breakup, or losing a job. I hardly never met someone who just said, oh, tomorrow I'm gonna live on the streets. But it's like normally you have, they experienced something which kind of changed their life in a deep way and in a negative way, so that they lost, for example, the ability to reach out for help in time. So some people I met, they are having mental health problems, and they are no longer able to open their mailbox to be able to pay their bills or things like this, you know, like really practical things. And if you don't open your the letters in your mailbox over many months and you don't pay your bills, then at the end something can happen, like Zwangsräumung is a German word, so you are forced to leave your apartment.
The exhibition you did at the Bundestag, maybe you should, better if you describe rather than I paraphrase it.
So the exhibition was called Home Street Home. And it was the first time ever that I visited people in their apartments who, after a period of homelessness, and for some people this period was like 22 years, for others it was like 1 or 2 years, found a home again. So before, when I worked with the topic of homelessness, I always portrayed people on the streets of Berlin. And this was the first time that I thought, well, I want to tell some stories of change, of hope, to the hopeless guy. It occurred to me, or I realized over the years when I portrayed people on the streets of Berlin, that many people are living on the streets for many years. So it's not like, oh, I'm on the streets for 1 or 2 months and then I get some help and I'm able to leave this horrible situation. But people are living there for many years. And over the years, some of the people I met, they died, and others are still living on the streets. And only a few, like really a few, found a way to escape homelessness, like to go back into apartments. And so I wanted to focus onto this story. So I traveled through Germany for many months, and visited people in Hamburg, Nuremberg, Köln, Essen, Düsseldorf, and so on, in many cities.
Mm-hmm. To be in the Bundestag, to be amongst the people who are shaping the policies that put people in or out of homes in many cases, or whom we might hold responsible for that. Do you think that they were happier to have the portraits of people who had gotten off of the streets than being confronted with people they had failed?
It's a good question. For me, actually, it was surprising and also amazing that it was possible to show an exhibition about homelessness in the Bundestag. Right. You know, because it's kind of a statement if you like walk into the building and then the topic of homelessness is really huge in front of your eyes, you know, and you can't deny it.
Did you see it being an undeniable presence to the people who are working there?
Yeah, because you couldn't ignore this. Really, you couldn't ignore it because it was like huge in the sense of you have the challenge that there you don't have walls, so you can't put pictures on the walls, but you just have like a huge hallway. It's like 47 meters long and 3 meters width. And so what I got like huge light boxes, which you normally use for advertisement, and then there I put the portraits on. And so if you stand in front of a picture, it's like the person is bigger than you and you literally are looking into their eyes because it's so huge, you know?
So I assume that by doing this work, it has affected your perspective and the way that you also meet people on the street and communicate with them. But what do you think is a change that we as a society can do in the way that we approach homeless people on our day-to-day basis?
I think like what I realized for those people who found like a way out of homelessness, I would say always the first thing what changed was that there was a relationship to somebody else. This could be the relationship to a social worker, to just a friend they met. So the first thing I would say, and the most important thing, is to build relationships. This sounds really huge for what can we do on a daily basis. You know, this sounds huge. But I think it starts really in little things like, for example, where you are living in front of your supermarket, maybe this one guy is always sitting there or this one girl. And you could maybe once per week say, hi, do you need something maybe from the supermarket? Like in my Kiez, where I'm living in the area, many unhoused or homeless people are no longer allowed to go in there because they were caught stealing something. And so they are sitting in front of the supermarket, but they can't enter, but maybe they need some food for their dog or they need something else. So I ask them sometimes, can I get something for you? And so this is one way. Or you can give them maybe €1 or something like this, but I would try to connect it with like speaking with them, you know, like maybe asking, hey, how are you? How was your day? Like to start to build relationship. I think this is one little big thing we can do.
Right. And saying how is your day doesn't even require you to give €1.
Yeah, because like when I speak with people on the streets, like often they say it's really painful for them that they feel like invisible, that people are looking through them. So if you are on the U8 or another train, for example, I was coming today with U2 and U8 here. On my short ride, maybe 4 people approached me. And I get it totally, yeah, that sometimes you are tired and you just want to stare in your phone. But they say it's really painful for them to be ignored. And it's better for them if someone says no, like also not giving something, but not ignoring them.
I'd like to ask also, after this exhibition is closed, what's next for you?
Yeah, wow, it's really challenging at the moment because with this exhibition, like now I get a lot of emails and phone calls from other cities who say, we would like to show this exhibition in our city. I'm really glad and happy that it was so well received also through the media, but it's really challenging how to finance those things. So at the moment it's really challenging. Like I say, of course you can have the exhibition. It would be great if we can show it at your place, but you need to like pay the transport and the Messebauer. I don't know what is the English word.
Somebody who builds
the stage
craft.
Builder of
the art,
the display. Messe is like
the maker of.
If there's like a place where people are going to go
and see something
or experience it, yeah, they wouldn't have to be when we cite.
Yeah, that's what we call it in English.
Great.
Well, I think that's great. Also, that you could also have the attitude like, "Hey, I've played the Bundestag. I'm not coming to Yeah. That's they opened at Madison Square Garden there. So we're going to continue the conversation later on, but let's please give a round of applause for Debora.
To quote a colleague of our next guest, Karen is probably the most knowledgeable person on the topic. She has been working on this for over 30 years and has, among other things, co-invented the Kältebus, a co-founder of Kumfide, an organization to support non-abstinent alcoholics. In 1991, she began her work with Berliner Stadtmission and in 1991 became head of homelessness services. Together with Neuen Chance GmbH, she started the project Housing First Berlin. Please welcome Kathrin Holzinger.
Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, Kathrin. What is wrong with our perception of homelessness and people without homes?
Well, you asked this question because I told you to ask it, and now I have to answer it, which is not so easy. When you walk through the streets, you see people and you think, oh, he or she might be homeless because maybe the person is not dressed very well. It's he or she looks like being drunk or having psychological problems. So you think, this is homelessness. Some of these people are not homeless. And on the other hand, about, I would say, 90% of the people who are homeless, you would never recognize as being homeless because they look like you and me. And I think what is wrong is that we have a very small group of people who obviously have a lot of problems, and we think these are the people who are homeless. And that's the reason why we think it's something very special, and it has nothing to do with me because I'm very different to these people, and this could not ever happen to me. But this is wrong. And homelessness is something which occurs in many different types, and it can hit nearly anybody.
I think it's, the sort of, Hollywood version of the stories we hear, even just in the press, of how one becomes homeless or becomes homed again are dramatic. Listening to some of the conversations that Debora recorded, some of the stories are very mundane. And many of the people who are struggling for a home in this city, couch surfing and going from one sublet to another, at least in English, we've been sort of discouraged from saying homeless, but it seems like maybe what you're suggesting is it's more useful to consider more people.
Yeah. Well, we decide between being homeless and being a rough sleeper. And in German, it's obdachlos
right.
or wohnungslos. One means you don't have a place to live with your own contract. That means you are homeless, like in Germany, wohnungslos. And the people who are sleeping on the street, which are a very small group of the homeless people, they are the rough sleepers. And they are the ones who are in our mind, and they are more spectacular. This
right.
is why, people can deal with them like they can feel good if they give money, and they can feel good because they are better than them. And they represent the topic homelessness. But this is very dangerous, I think, because it makes the problem very small, and it is a very big problem in our society.
Is there a third category in between those two? People who are going from one emergency shelter to another, or have some sort of temporary group housing but not their own home?
Yeah, well, there are people who are on and off, like, for example, you're a rough sleeper and then you go to the government and they say you can go in a sort of hostel, which means most of the time you have to share the room with other people. You don't have your own room, and then you go there and you live there for a while, and then something happens that you say, no, I can't stand it anymore, and then they leave. Or you have a friend who can stay with him for a while, and then he might say, sorry, but I can't handle it anymore. For women, it's very dangerous to be on the street. So what they do, they choose a male person and live with this person. It's no good relationship, but it's better than being on the street. So there are many sort of things that are delicate. No, it's not the right word. Is it? They are not good, but they are not rough sleeping.
Can you explain a little bit what Housing First does?
Yes, it's not so easy to explain a little bit. I start, and you interrupt me if it's enough, okay?
Yeah. Just simply enough that I could understand it.
Well, I think it's very important to say that in Germany we have a very good supporting system for homeless people. So people can get a lot of different kind of help, and very many people find this help. But there's a certain group of people who are mostly the ones who have been living on the street for a very long time, who have mental diseases, who have made very bad experiences with helping system, with social workers, like I am one, and they don't trust anymore to the helping system. And the helping system is like people have to prove that they are worth getting a new flat. And for these people, it might be a real chance that they get the flat and the contract first, so they are independent, and then they make the decision, what kind of support do I need to keep this flat?
That's the people who have entered housing first,
yeah,
as opposed
the participants.
to, yes.
Yeah.
Because it can be difficult to prove that you are ready to have a home. So what is that? So outside of housing first, how does that work?
Well, it's normally you get to the government and you say, I need help. And then they tell you what kind of help you need. Like, I can see you have a drug problem and you have debts and you whatever. And then they find a social worker who says, I'm the right person to help you. And then the social worker tells the person how to solve the problems. And this person, who does not feel very good anyway, has to agree that it's the least person of all, the ones who is receiving help, who is not able to help himself, but who needs support. And for some people this works, but others, they can't stand it, and they feel like they want to make the decisions themselves, and they have their own categories and their own perspective, what is important in my life. And with Housing First, it's a challenge for the social workers and for the crew. It's a mixed crew. They are peer group workers, for example, as well, who have been on the street as well. And they can just offer help. They can't force the help. Like in the original type of helping system, if the person who is homeless does not have a good compliance, they will say, sorry, but we have to quit. You're not working with us. And with Housing First, the person says, okay, this is my house. I have the contract. I don't have to deal with you at all.
Is it me?
1 second. I don't know. Something, maybe mic 3?
The Holy Ghost.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's actually, since you mentioned it, and it is, many of these organizations are tied to have Christian names or churches in their names. And I know that plays a different role in Germany than in America or in the United States where I'm from. Is that part of what you do? Or is Christianity present or proselytization present in any of the work of Stadtmission?
I think one reason why it is like this is because dealing with homelessness means very often to help people to survive. So it's a very giving help. And churches like to give. So they do, there's always the danger just to be happy with helping people to survive for the next night or for the next day.
Right.
And that's something everybody can do. It's like you can do it with volunteer work. And the challenge is to do these, to help people to survive, but also to help people that they can change their living situation in a more permanent way. And I think churches have a lot of, they have the Auftrag, the task. The task to help people, so they can do it with homeless people, because it's good that they can stay there at a place for the night. But what it also needs is not to be happy just to help for the night, but to find solutions for their life situation.
So just to clarify also for the listener, so what Housing First does is it offers a house first and gives a little bit of agency back to the person in being able to ask for help and ask for the type of help that they want.
Yes, and the helpers, they have to deal with it. If the person says, I don't want to think about my drug addiction, I want to get a job, then they have to deal and say, okay, we can try it and we support you. And maybe one day he realizes that drug addiction is not so good for finding work. And then they start dealing with the drug addiction. But it's more, the person can be proud and can have a good self-esteem because he or she knows I'm in charge of my life. And the normal helping system is good, but it always tells the person, we are the ones who can tell you what to do.
And this is an age-old Berlin question, but where are these apartments found or these houses found for that Housing First is able to offer?
Well, our Housing First project is very privileged. We have a person who is just in charge for finding flats for our users, and he's doing a good job. And what we offer the landlords is that we look after the people. So this is an advantage for them as well, because if they have a problem with the tenant, they can call us, and we will. Even though we don't have the contract. The contract is between the landlord and the former homeless person, but they can call us and we can sort of support the situation. And this is good for the landlord too.
They get the money, which is something that I feel like a lot of people in real estate are really into, right? So
you mean they want money?
They get money for the.
Yeah, they do get money for the flat.
And so they like that. I mean, and probably also, is there additional funds or tax benefits or insurances or other things that make it an appealing tenant?
Actually, we do have an insurance which says that if for some reason the flat gets destroyed, we can fix it. This is sort of an extra insurance, but we just needed it once in all the years we have been doing Housing First now.
Housing First is a success, right? And it's growing. You've demonstrated to the government that it's a program worth continuing, right?
Yes, but it still is a special program, and what we wanted to be is part of the regular helping system, because so like it is now, we never know if we'll get money next year. Okay. And if it were part of the regular helping system, we would know it is a personal right a person has the right to apply for this kind of help, and this would be much better.
What are some structural issues that you find harmful? I mean, I think you've addressed some already with the idea of being enforced help. At least something I've noticed in the discourse is that homeless people have all their agency taken away. They're suddenly just someone that needs help, that you need to give something specific to, that you choose how help is supposed to look like. And now something that we haven't spoken about yet, but that you mentioned, that drug addiction is obviously something that is a pervading issue as well, or particularly one that is noticeable for us in our daily lives.
Yeah.
But I reckon that very many people get drug addicted once they lost their house, not before.
Yeah.
And because this is one way to survive on the street. I think we could do much more in preventing homelessness. I would not like to bore you with regulations and law, but there are some.
I'd be curious.
What you think some good
Joel's not here to
preventative
do that, so it would be.
Okay, I want you.
Yes, no, tell us. I mean, yes, we would love to know some of the regulations and laws.
I tell you one. And this is Bundes law,
yes.
You know?
Not Berlin specific, or not state specific,
this
but Germany-wide.
Could be changed by
Federal.
the Bundestag. If you just, you have a Dauerauftrag,
is permanently being taken out of your
bank account is paying the rent itself. And then there's a mistake.
Yeah.
It does not work. And in February, that did not work. You did not pay the rent, and you didn't even notice. And your landlord wants to get rid of you. What he can do is he can give you an fristlose Kündigung, another word you have to translate.
So basically just canceling your contract without...
False.
Immediately.
No, an immediate cancellation of your contract.
And if you pay, then he has to take it back. But what he can do at the moment, he can give you the immediate cancellation, and he can give you a regular at the same time. And you can heal the immediate canceling, but you can't heal the regular. That means 6 months later you will lose your flat, even though you just once, not your fault, did not pay the rent. And
Amazing.
This is terrible. If somebody wants to get rid of you, has good chances to do so.
Wow, don't tell my rental agency, because I have said a lot of nasty things about them, but when the ownership changed in my building, I 100% didn't fill out the new Dauer Auftrag form and did not pay rent for like 3 months. Wow, they're actually incredibly generous, and I take back everything I said.
So just say
oh, wow. Either that or they're just so bad at their jobs.
This is one structure. I would like to say one other structural thing.
Please.
And once you are on the street, you have to be very busy to organize your to survive.
Right.
You have to find, where can I eat, where can I have a shower, where can do I get clothes, whatever. You have to organize everything, and you have to walk from one place to another to get a shelter. You have to be there at least 2 hours before to get a place. So you're very busy in surviving. And there's not much energy or no energy left to change your living situation. So what we need is places where can call them 24/7, where they can stay and get support and don't have to bother about surviving on each day base.
And we actually call those co-working spaces now in Berlin.
But also, just to clarify, I think some people might not know that in a Notunterkunft, so a place where you go at night just for the night, you have to leave in the morning. It is not a place where they can spend the entire day and sleep in and then just hang out. It is really just a shelter for the night. It is also just one more thing that I wanted to ask about, which is very often when people have lived on the streets for a long time, they do build a sense of community with people, and so often when they go into housing for the first time, suddenly experience a sense of loneliness. Is that something that you've encountered as well?
Yeah, that's and when you've like for Housing First, but for all housing programs, this I think is the biggest challenge. Because being on this is something I had to learn because I'm very bürgerlich, very
bürgerlich is such a beautiful German word because it isn't conservative. It's just very
old-fashioned.
No, I say normal. I'm very normal.
Bürgerlich is very normal or
whatever.
Kind of.
So I never experienced something
maybe not unnormal.
Unnormal.
Yeah. So what I learned is what I think is the best and only way of living, being in a flat. For people who have been living on a street for very long, this is not like this, because coming into a flat means you're sitting there and maybe there are only 4 walls and nothing, and you have to make it to be a home. And this is difficult. And if you don't feel good, because the problems don't end when you get a flat. No. So you sit there and have all day time to think about how miserable your life is. Whereas when you're on the street, you're so busy with organizing your life, you don't have to bother, you don't have to think. And coming into a flat means getting rid of most of your friends, because you can't bring them all in, and also having so much time to feel bad. And so this is the biggest challenge, to give your life a sense. And I think, in addition to what you said, Debora, people to change their life from the street into a normal life, bürgerliches life, they need a reason. They need a reason to do this, because it's very hard. It's very hard to find the way back, because you will meet many people who are not very friendly to you. And if you don't know that that's worth it, you won't make it, because it's so much easier to stay on the street. And then you know you can't fail anymore. When you once you try to get back, you can fail. And once you're in a flat, you can feel maybe that this does not turn your life completely in a new direction. And then the real work starts. And this is something people have to realize.
That's a kind of an amazing layer of dichotomies where you can be in a shelter, but it cannot be a home. And then you're in a home, but it's not a home because it's providing shelter and not a home. Or, you know, if you have made it on the street for a long time, you're probably someone who's incredibly self-reliant and knows how to get what they need or want. I don't think I last, but that's, you know, that's also the flip side of self-determination or self-reliance, where you may not be the person who has fun with social workers, or is ready to deal with neighbors.
Fun with social workers sounds like a really interesting sitcom. Fun with social workers.
Now, see, now you're making it sound more like a game show. But I think it really helps us to maybe examine again, like how to put yourself in those shoes. We're going to move on to our next
Yes, just for the sake of time,
now.
but I have a million other questions, because even though you said it might be boring with the laws, I actually thought it was quite fascinating. Like, I didn't know that. And,
right. I mean, all I know about is Anmeldung, and that's got to be a tough hurdle to jump.
Radio Spaetkauf.
Our next guest has been working and volunteering in Queer Berlin for 25 years with many different organizations, including the HVD, Humanistischer Verband Deutschland, in the Neustadt program for and with queer homeless people in the context of social housing assistance. Also as a part of Berlin's Sonntagsclub, and is currently a board member of Lesbenring e.V. Here to tell us about Queer Home, please welcome Kathrin Schultz.
Kathrin was sitting in the front row, scribbling notes. Our typical audience is really barely paying attention unless I do something really stupid. So I feel like, what do you want to say first?
I thank you for the invitation, because the situation of LGBTIQ homeless people has not a big lobby. So it's very important for us to speak about the situation. Thank you.
What is unique in terms of this issue to queer LGBTQI plus people?
I think Debora said it. So sorry, I'm a little bit aufgeregt. Yeah, my English is not so good. I will try my best. So,
feel free to use a German word wherever you want. And
Yes, I've been doing okay translating.
For listeners at home, I just got roasted off mic by a really charming Catholic social worker. So there you go.
So I think the unique is if we assume 5 to 10% of the majority are queer people. We have many queer homeless people in the city, but we have no numbers. We don't know how much, because there are no studies in Germany, not in Berlin, not in Germany. We only know the situation from other capitals or cities or Länder. The unique, Debora said it vorhin, so das Wort ist immer noch nicht da. Earlier, thank you. Debora said it earlier. The unique, I think, is that queer people lost their family relationships. Maybe they want after transition or coming out, and both topics are not depends from the age. So you can go in transition or have your coming out all over your life. Right. And then many people lost their family relationships. So I tell you about myself. I live in Berlin for 25 years and I'm a single mom. And I one or twice there was an emergency that I lost my flat, and who helped me? It was my mother and my father, so I have a good relationship to them. But many queer people, and we counseling 600 people in the last 12 months, is very much. Many people have problems because they are alone. You said it earlier. Many queer people came to Berlin. we called Regenbogenhauptstadt, Rainbow Capital. So the political people like this word. They are proud of it. But that means we need more helps, maybe, or more places, or more things for queer people. And first, in 1 year, I work today at Queerhome. You said I work for 6 or 7 years with queer homeless people, but Queerhome is an organization from Sonntagsclub for 1 year. It's very new.
So do you want to explain what Queerhome is, just for the listeners who might not have heard about it?
Queerhome is the first organization in Germany we know who works for queer people who are homeless. But
Sorry, the first in Germany?
The first organization with this topic.
Wow.
Who get money from the government. And we are only 2 people. So my colleague and me, we have 2 Stellen.
2 positions.
Genau, and we work with this special topics. We say we are in the middle. We are not a government organization. We are not a church or Christian organization. We are not an only queer organization. We are in the middle because the organizations who work with homeless people have no knowledge about LGBTIQ, and the queer organizations has normally no knowledge about homeless, and we are in the middle and try to give the informations to the one side and to the other side.
And does Housing First play a role?
Housing First, I think it's a very interesting and important possibility to interrupt homeless. But it's only one of the solutions. But I like the idea because I worked in another place. It's not Housing First. This is what Karin told you, that there's a social HVD Neustadt. That means in Germany 67er Beratung. It's another kind of counseling. And that means you are the social worker and you say, so step 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's not good for every people, or for all the people. So Housing First is a good possibility. But we have another problem. This Housing First means we find solutions for long term. But in Berlin, people called us and they say, we do not know where I can sleep tomorrow. And we have not enough shelters and not enough possibilities for queer people to find a place for the night. It's a big problem. And then we have a difference also between people who have an official status, or maybe they can get from the government a hostel to stay at night, but it's only for people who have official status or who get social Leistungen.
Who get social assistance of some sort.
And if you have not this official status, you have a problem in this
system.
In the system and in Berlin, because many shelters are not for LGBTIQ. So we stand up for the rights for all homeless people, of course. So the situation, I think the situation is not good for all the people, but LGBTIQ people has other topics. Maybe imagine you have a room for maybe a woman who are homeless and trans women where they can stay. In the room for women or men, what's about the non-binarity, what's about the privacy, what's about sexuality. We advised people sometimes they live for 5 years in a room with other people. They are refugees, maybe, and they live for 5 years in one room with other people. It's not okay, I think so. And because their status is not geklärt.
It's not clarified.
It's not clarified. It's not clear. So,
And it's oftentimes arbitrary who stays, who gets sent away if they are a refugee. Or I remember Joel wrote about 2 people he met from Jamaica, both fleeing the same situation, and one gets to stay, another doesn't because a bureaucrat makes the decision. To what extent are you also looking to try and educate to queer communities about homelessness in the city of Berlin?
If I understand the question right, I can answer. I think the very important thing is sensibility to this topic in the community also. We know people who contact us, they are homeless. That means not rough sleepers, but that means they sleep on couches from friends. And many months, other people don't know this. Their friends don't know this. So they are ashamed about this topic. So it's very important in the community or for all of us to have the sensibility that it's not their fault that they are homeless. They need this relationship and other people who say, hey, I try to understand. It's important that we don't close our eyes, that we stand up. Maybe we go to demonstration against the social cuts in the last months. The political situation is not good.
I've heard all three of you say, maybe with different words, and it's something that I think most people know, but that we forget often, or I'm noticing that I forget it in my iTalk now. I can't mix languages in my day-to-day life, that we tend to dehumanize the people that we see on the street. We tend to take away their right to choose what kind of help they want. We think it's embarrassing. We don't want to say hello to them. And so maybe just for everyone listening, remember that it's just giving that humanity back, of making sure that we know they exist and that they haven't stopped existing.
This just affects people from all different stories. And there are so many things that we've learned to talk about. There used to just be a lot of things we don't talk about. Alcoholism was something you just, oh yeah, whatever. You never had a label on it. Now it's something we can just chat about at a bar, and it becomes a part of the discussion because we've let it into our own circles. And I think that's interesting. Housing First because that takes people into shared spaces, apartments and buildings that they're not set up to segregate people. Or your buddy who's couch surfing is homeless. And to understand that this is something that affects us all, I think helps us understand the people we might see fitting the stereotype. How is Queerhome looking to grow? What kind of resources does it need?
At first, Queerhome needs networking and money of the government, of course, also. But we don't want only say that the government is responsible to change the situation. It's not enough. So we go to the community, and maybe it's a little thing. If people have sharing flats, they can contact us and say, hey, we have a free room. Many people think the problem is that people have not enough money for the rent. It's not the truth. The homeless topic reached the middle of the queer community. Often the problem is that we have not good places in internet to find VG.
VGgezoek.com or whatever.
I live here for 25 years, and now it's like to find a flat. It's not possible. So we would be glad when people contact us and say, hey, we have a solidarity room, or we have a sharing flat room, donations. It's also okay. But the networking and the sensibility of the people, I think this is the important thing. So I have no answers of all the questions. I have so many questions in my head.
Yeah.
So I think we are very, wie sagt man, kämpferisch?
Ready to fight.
Pugnacious.
Or we're very...
Genau.
Bellicose?
We go to the government and say, this is not okay, this is not okay, though, but we have no answers.
Right.
We only can find the answers together with other people, and so networking or lobby is the important thing.
You talk about going to the government saying, this is not okay, this is not okay. I can't vote. I can talk, I can write letters, I can anyway, but we've got local Bezirksamts where you've got either overwhelmed people without enough resources or politicians who seem remote. To whom do we direct our anger or our demands for change? Like where in the government, who do we hold responsible? Who's saying, let's let some people not have homes? This is maybe a question for the whole panel.
For everyone.
I mean, Debora managed to get herself into the Bundestag. I don't know.
It
wasn't like a die-hard type situation.
I think it's difficult to say, right? Like, who do we hold responsible? But I think Kathrin, what you just mentioned is very interesting. The idea 25 years ago, if Queerhome had existed 25 years ago and you would have asked in the LGBTQI plus community, hey, we need a room, there would have been a lot more available rooms. Ultimately, the housing crisis in Berlin is real, not just for rough sleepers or unhoused people. Wohnungslosigkeit is a problem that is, as you say, is pervading the middle of the society at large. I mean, I know off the top of my head quite a few people who have experienced stints of homelessness in, my community, which is gut bürgerlich, Mittelklasse, like have university degrees, improv people, comedians, which I didn't need that like jab, but whatever.
Well, you were calling them, is that burgerlish?
This is now happening more and more and more. I know people who used to live here who have left here because they said, I cannot find a flat. I will be homeless if I stay in the city. And obviously homelessness is not a Berlin-specific problem, but it is a problem that is getting worse through the housing crisis as well.
Let's just do a quick round of applause for the
Yes.
third guest. Get her exit, and before we turn this into a panel. Deborah, yeah?
I think there are different ways to approach politicians. So one thing is that it is a human right, housing. So housing is a human right. I think all of us, we have this luxury, and it's good to protest for the people who don't have this luxury, but it's like you can hold the government responsible and you can say, well, it's a human right, and the coalition, so the, how do you say it? Traffic light coalition?
The traffic light coalition.
The traffic light coalition said that they want to overcome homelessness by 2030. So if you hear this, you think are they living in a fairy tale, or what is it about? But it's like a goal they wrote down. So
Right.
also the EU said this. And I think it's kind of like with the climate crisis, you can say, well, people, you wrote this down. This is the focus. So let's push it.
It's hard to hold them accountable. I mean, all you can do is not vote for them. We can have a referendum to say we need more housing, and they can just not do it.
I think you can do more, actually.
Right. Yes, let's hear it.
So, because I think you can really write to the people. So you can write to, most politicians are now on Instagram. They have websites, so you can send emails, you can write on Instagram, you can go to the Bürgersprechstunde. So this is like a place where you can meet your local politician in your area. And maybe it sounds a little bit weird, but because I just came from being at the Bundestag, which is not my normal tutorium.
That's not your Stammtisch?
No, it's totally not. For me, it was really like entering into a strange new world. But there I met different politicians who were really working on this issue, and who also described how difficult it is between the different parties to fight for rights. So you have one party who really tries to bring change in the law, or they have now, it's called Nationaler Aktionsplan, where they try to change things to have more affordable housing. And so they said, but how difficult it is when another party is blocking. And another thing I wanted to say, because you guys spoke about it earlier, I see so many empty offices in Berlin.
Yeah.
And I spoke with an architect. His name is Van Bole Menzel. So he builds also tiny houses, and he has in Kreuzberg, maybe some guys know him. He has in Kreuzberg like a little thing. It's called a pickup house, and there homeless people can sleep. But what he is saying, and I find it really good, he says we have so many Gewerberäume, like empty places, and wouldn't it be possible to change the law? Because at the moment it's like, if it is an office, you can't use it as a flat. You are not allowed to. But couldn't we use like empty office towers and change them into apartments? So I think there are many creative ways to approach this problem.
I would love to. I thought you were going to say change the locks, because that seems easier than changing the laws.
But that's what I will say. Yeah. And Dan isn't the only one with hopelessness on this podcast. I think it's a bit of a podcast disease. Sure. Forgive me, I completely forget the name of the street where the homeless people took over an empty building. Habermannstraße? Habersaatstraße. My personal hopelessness comes from, obviously I'm not working in the field, right? So it is the things that I see and the things that I experience. So when I see what happened at Habersaatstraße, right, where it's actually a great sense of agency, we find a solution for ourselves. Look, it's here, we take it. And I understand that the government can't just go, okay, sure, whatever. But the fact that it wasn't seen as, okay, a solution was found to this problem. And another thing that, like, living in Kreuzberg, taking the U8, going through Cottbuser Tor, Moritzplatz, Schönleinstraße, you obviously see the drug abuse problem is something that families really struggle with, because you're obviously walking with your child while somebody is smoking crack or heroin is a very difficult position to put your children in, or yourself very often. And the problem is that the narrative is putting the blame on users rather than thinking about the fact that there's very few Schutzpunkte where people can consume safely in Berlin, right? So where are they meant to go? I understand that the users are in the U-Bahn stations because that is a free shelter place to be, and you can't use in a shelter, right? You cannot be in a Notunterkunft and be using openly, which is understandable. But I think the hopelessness comes from me seeing the city making complaints or issues, but not actually giving a solution.
So
there are structures that exist. Having more safe spaces for consumption, it helps with fewer illnesses, with giving clean needles. I live by Moritzplatz, and most people don't know it's like not a very big station, but what has happened at Moritzplatz is like hard to watch because it's such a big station. It was like taken over by people who were living there over months and months and months, and then kept getting kicked out, kept being swept away. It was cleaned off, and then obviously they came back because you just swept it away and told people to leave, but you don't give a hand. And seeing this sweep it under the rug, we're just going to pretend it doesn't exist. That makes me personally very sad.
Are there ways that we can create better shared spaces in the city aside from getting people homes, housing first? Are there other ways to develop shared spaces in the city for people to use who are with and without homes?
You mean they use the same spaces?
Well, I mean, to me, it's
sounds like a co-working space to me. I'm not gonna lie, Dan. But
co-living space.
Yeah, I think it's just some of those offices. Just open them up, give people access. Give people access to the internet, fresh water, and a coffee machine. You spend your day there. I think co-working spaces.
I agree, and it is also. I mean, the winter brings us into this conflict more. You know, there are parks where, like in my neighborhood, kids can play on one end, and people on the other end can participate in their own cultural activities or whatever. But it is a shared public space. Is there a way to create those that are indoors? Is that something that's a possibility? Is what I'm saying? You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I think this is what's happening, and this is the three people who know the problem very well and deal with it on a day-to-day basis. And you and I are like, all right, so what about this? So you take a room and you open it up all day.
I do have one idea what I can say.
I'd
say I love Berlin because Berlin has always been a place where people do exactly this. They share space. And I don't know any other city in Germany where rich and poor and homeless and mega rich people live together so closely and so friendly.
Yeah.
We are changing with the gentrification.
Yes.
So things are changing and times get more rough. We have many more people with problems in Berlin, so it's not like it used to be. But I think we, with Berlin City Mission, we experience how friendly Berlin is and how helpful. And when we, like now, say we urgently need sleeping bags because we have to provide them to the people on the street in the winter, and we don't have enough. We experience that Berlin people are very, very helpful. But it's getting hard to be very open-minded.
Right.
Like with our shelters, all shelters in Berlin, one after the other, had to occupy security. We need security because people get very upset. there. And this, quite a few years ago, it wasn't like this. So this is maybe the reason why we were so reluctant with your question.
Yeah.
We have the situation, we have too little space, too little resources for too many people in need. And that makes it very difficult to have the vision of being happily together.
Right.
Because everybody has the feeling, I have not enough, and then you not like to share.
I think Berlin is a very special city in Europe because of the history of the war, So we have some problems now, 20 or 25 years later than in other cities. And now we have the situation, we have to change something. The government want to interrupt homeless since 2030. It's a fairy tale, I think, how they want to do this. But I also think there are, like Karen said, little things we can do. Maybe cafes, organizations can be more sensible for people who are homeless or who has no place to stay, but it's important too that the people are not überfordert,
Overwhelmed
with the topics. Many people ask us, what can we do? And it's so different, the ways. But I say it again, the sensibility is important, and ask the people what they need. We have not all the answers for this. We have many questions in our head. But for example, Sonntagsclub, I wanted to say, is the oldest organization in East Berlin with a cafe, and we made 3 celebrations in this year for homeless people and not homeless people, that they can meet and talk with each other. This is important, maybe. But it's not so easy for the Sonntagsclub, for the cafe, because there are new situations, new people get in contact with each other, but it's interesting. But it's not so easy, I wanted to say. So we need all a little bit time, and we have to hear what the people say. So.
Thank you. That's I guess where my question came was I spent some time of the weekend at the Potsdamer Platz Arkaden, which got, is the mall that got shut out by the Berlin Mall, and they redeveloped it into like an open space for a little bit of shopping, and there's a big food market, and it just seems like, you could walk through there like a street, but it's warmer, and it kind of enraged me that you didn't have to spend money to be in there, but you had to have money in your pocket.
But you do know that this is private property, and they do, the people who manage it, they tell you if you're allowed there or not.
Right.
They have the right to tell you, I don't like your nose, please leave.
I guess to say what you said, they have rights to refuse you into there or whatever, and there's this idea that there's a right to a home, but that's not a part of the law. Right? German constitution doesn't state that this is a right that people have. Is that something that can and should change?
To make it a law to...
That it is a right, like other rights were granted in this country, to a home.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Okay. That's what I was
I think, honestly, we could not have a better end word.
I tried.
This is, would be nice is the perfect end word to this episode. I don't think we could have done it better.
I tried to say something hopeful.
Yeah, that is, we end on, yes, would be nice, which is a very beautiful type of hope.
Okay.
Right.
Before we put a complete close to it, any last words from any of you about things you'd like to see our listeners do tomorrow? How much money? What do you want? 20 billion? I don't know. What's the budget? The German federal government has an oil reserve worth 12 billion euro. I don't know why we have a strategic oil reserve and not a strategic home reserve. That seems insane to me. But what can we do tomorrow? What would you like to see done? And that could be the magic wand, or it could be something more pragmatic.
I would like to choose not to answer your question, but to tell you something, because we tried to be positive, but it didn't really work for the last minutes. So I really feel like I would like to say something positive at the end.
Thank you.
And there is so many so many connections between people from different life situations. There is relationship, there is sharing, there is, and I think still Berlin is a very sharing city. And I would like at the end say that this makes me being hopeful that I see that at very many places people try to find solutions and try to leave no one behind. And this makes me being happy and hopeful for this city and for the homeless people.
And I want to say thank you for all the people who works in this topic, because it's a very hard job. Sometimes I'm not optimistic. Sometimes I have the weekend and I think about all the people we can't help. We help many people, but not enough. But on the other side, I agree. There are so many people in this city who wants to change the situation, and it's very important to work with this topic and to make some interviews like this.
I was hoping the answer was going to be more podcasting. That was what I was looking for. Debora? Yeah.
Okay, now we had so much positive vibes. I wanted to just look for the global scale. So I think, because we spoke about it, that the middle class is now also confronted with, I can't find a home. It's like houses are now investment. Yeah. So huge companies, they are buying thousands and thousands of apartments and houses. So it's speculations are made with housing. And I think it's really a dangerous development because this is increasing injustice and the gap between the rich and the poor. And so I think it's a problem for democracy. So this was a global statement.
Yeah.
I think we should go repopulate small villages in Mediterranean Europe.
Oh.
No, but there's
little empty ones?
Empty villages in southern Italy.
You just want to get away
Greece.
from winter in Berlin.
I'm just cold. I'm really cold.
Yeah. Again, thank you to all of our guests, listeners, or people here in the room. You'll be able to find information on all of their organizations, Debora's work. You'll be able to find all of that in the show notes. Do what you can, but also make sure that you're holding the people with more power and money than you responsible. And yeah, capitalism is a problem, but I also really love shopping, so I don't, I feel like I'm not sure the way out of this one. I don't know, is there do they have mail order and communism? I don't know. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Matilda. Thank you to Manuel and Carolyn at EAB for helping us do this.
Thank you, Grace on Tech. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience.
All right.
Yeah, I was like, just.
Berlin News in English.
Awesome. You can let it keep running.